Welcome to Illuminating Catholics, podcast of the Diocese of Sioux City. I'm Dawn Prosser, Director of Communications for the Diocese. Together with Carmen Bauer of the Faith Formation Office, we will shed light upon topics of faith in the modern church. Our guests include Catholic clergy, religious sisters, and other experts in their fields to help us understand what's happening in the church today. We will explore issues, even the tough ones, and to find answers to common questions about Catholicism. Thank you for joining us for today's Illuminating Catholics, shedding light to understand the modern church.
Hello and welcome back to Illuminating Catholics. My name is Carmen Bauer and I'm the Director of Faith Formation for the Diocese of Sioux City.
And I'm Dawn Prosser, Director of Communications for the Diocese of Sioux City.
And we thank all of you for listening to this podcast and for subscribing so you don't miss an episode. We hope that you are enjoying all of our many guests and our many topics. Today, we are so thrilled to have another guest with us. We will have Terry Haggerty joining us. He is the Executive Director of the Shrine of Trinity Heights, Queen of Peace here in Sioux City. It is one of the 2 diocesan shrines and one of the 4 pilgrimage sites declared by Bishop Nicholas for the new Jubilee Year of Hope.
Thank you for inviting me on. This is really a treat to even to be mentioned in what you just said is just a thrill for Trinity Heights, Queen of Peace, you know. And how lucky are we as the Diocese of Sioux City? 2 diocesan shrines in our diocese, and they're both spectacular places. They truly are.
And in 2 different areas, so if you don't live very far from here or there, there's a shrine within distance for you. So Terry, people may have heard of Trinity Heights Queen of Peace, but maybe they don't know about you. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up as Executive Director of the Trinity Heights Queen of Peace Shrine.
Well, it's a funny story. You know, everybody has their own plan in life, and they go through life. And I was a United Parcel Service driver for almost 34 years. And part of my route was Trinity Heights Queen of Peace. The old buildings, that's how I got to meet Father Cooper, and that's how I really got involved with Beanie Cooper. Mm-hmm. So during that time there, when the shrine was just getting started, I had some conversations with Father Cooper when the statue became placed, and when they had the dedication in June of '92, I was singing with a small guitar group up at St. Michael's, and Beanie came to me and said, "Hey, would your group come and play for Mass? We're going to have Bishop Solons do the Mass." And so we set up outside the Marian Center, and we played the Mass, and that was my first foray in where Beanie had me. He brought me into that fold. So it went like that on for a number of years with the prayer and celebration banquet, so on and so forth. I retired from UPS after 34 years. I went to work with St. Michael Parish and Church at that time. It wasn't Holy Cross as of then yet. Doing a lot of building renovations. Father Snyder said, "Hey, I really need somebody to come and help." So we did a number of upgrades, renovations to St. Mike's Grade School and the St. Mike's Church. And at that time, Beanie had retired. Don Stevens was the director. And I got a call to say, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you." So I went up and I visited with the board at that time about coming in and joining them, and it was are you sure you got the right guy? You know, I mean, seriously, here I'm a retired UPS guy. I don't have that depth of a background, and Beanie was that guy that I call him the world's greatest motivator, and if he saw something in somebody, he brought out the very, very best. And he always said, you know, there's nothing you can't do. One of my favorite things that I like to do when I was driving up there in the vicinity, I would come up and I would spend my lunch break there praying the rosary in my truck. And that always, of course, was wonderful with Beanie and Father Cooper. You know, the devotion was there. The place was founded on the rosary. I had the same devotion with the rosary. So when the call came to come up, I'd like to tell the story. I went to Beanie and said, "Yeah, you got the wrong guy," you know. So he said, "Come in." So we went in the chapel, and we sat in the chapel, and he said, "You pray to the Blessed Mother." We pray to the Blessed Mother. She's got the right guy. you just have to believe and keep praying to her. She'll provide. She'll do what you and we need to do. So we would like to have this happen. So at that time, it was a big jump. It was a big leap for me and my wife. It was a joint venture that, this is something we both need to do. I love the place. Like I say, I had been involved in a way. I have a bench. Our family placed a bench for my parents in '97 up by the Sacred Heart. So I wanted to see the best continue for Trinity Heights Queen of Peace. And I thought, I think this is my calling right now. And can you believe I'm in my 13th year.
Is that how long it's been?
And it's just I have to pinch myself every once in a while to say, is this really happening? Is this, it's been a blessing. It's truly been a wonderful, wonderful adventure. There's always times when you go, oh, Blessed Mother, help.
Need your prayers.
Yeah. But it's a different path than a lot. But it's really evolved really, really, really nicely.
I would have guessed that you've been there a little bit longer than that, just your experience. So if we could back up just a little bit, I'm not from Sioux City, and maybe some other people listening may not be familiar. Beanie Cooper was the first director of the shrine.
Correct.
And then Father Cooper.
This is all Father Cooper's.
And what was his first name?
Harold.
Harold.
Yep. If you think of the KFHC radio,
yep.
Father Harold Cooper.
Okay.
FHC. So Father Cooper was a pastor here locally, and he had a devotion to the Blessed Mother. He was the Blue Army. It was everything you could to pray to the Blessed Mother, and don't ask her for everything, and just pour all your devotion to her. And he had a loyal, faithful group with him, and he had been on vacation in the early 80s out to California, and he saw a statue of the Blessed Mother in Santa Clara. And he came back here, Trinity High School and College. It had closed. It was getting run down. He said, hey, I went to school there. Beanie went to school there. Why can't we put a statue of the Blessed Mother here? So he reached out to a local developer. Now, at that time, Floyd Boulevard was different. There was nothing developed there. The property went from Casey's at 33rd all the way down to Walmart. All the way along that Floyd Boulevard was part of Trinity. Okay.
Wow.
So he reached out to a developer and he said, what would it take for me to get this? And the developer said, well, it's listed for a little over $300,000. He said, I can't do that. There's no way. So his local faithful group in 1, 2, sometimes 3 cars would drive up, and they would park in between the buildings at 4 o'clock, and they would pray the rosary every day. For over 2 years they did this every day. And the developer called him back and said, are you still interested in that property? And he said, that depends. What's the price? He said, if you can come up with $90,000, it's yours. So he said, I think I have the support. I think I can get the backing to do that. So they bought it for a little less than that. And that's how the whole thing started. His dream of putting this statue up there at that place that, so many guys went through and went on to be priests. And he said, this is the site that we need to do this. It overlooks this whole area, the statue. We can place it there so you people can see it. And then it was like, how are we going to do this? Well, at that time, his brother Beanie was retiring. And Beanie was the athletic director at Indiana State University. Now, Beanie was that tremendous motivator. He got people to do the best. He started as a teacher in Algona. He came here to Heelan High School. He taught there. They won a state football championship. He went on to USD. He was the athletic director there. They built the dome there. He left there. He went to Indiana State. What's Indiana State noted for? Larry Bird in the Final Four. Every place he went, he was a winner, and he just brought the best in people.
Golden touch.
Yeah, he just, it was amazing. Anyway, Father contacted him and said, what are you going to do? He said, I don't know. I might go to the lakes and retire and live life out. He said, I've got this dream, and I've acquired the property. Would you come and help? He said, I love the Blessed Mother just as much as you, I think. Yes, I think I'd like to do this. Let's do this thing. So he came back and he became the first executive director, and Father Cooper was the chaplain. And together, that's when they started. They formed a board, they got an incorporation, and then it just started to multiply from there.
About what year would you say that was?
Well, they acquired the property in 87. They incorporated in 89. They started clearing buildings there. Beanie contacted a lot of the old Trinity guys, and there were local guys that helped. J. Myron Olson and his company cleared the buildings for him. There was a local Marion Center downtown that had opened up. It was down on Nebraska, 5th in Nebraska. Dr. David Mack and his wife and Terry Moran and her husband are the ones that started that, and Carolyn Wolpert. So Beanie and Father reached to them and said, hey, would you bring the Marion Center here? Well, let's talk to Dave Mack. David Mack was a physician, lived in Illinois. He had a devotion to the Blessed Mother as well. And so they talked to him about bringing it up there. And this is one of the many head scratchers that you say it has to be divine intervention, because he said, well, you don't have a place to put it. No, we have to build a building. We're not there yet. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll build the building. I'll bring the bookstore, the Marion Center up there, and yes, we'll go from there. So he actually built the building. They opened up the Marion Center up there. Now they had a meeting room where the board could start meeting and they could start doing all of these plans. Another one of the early supporters decided that Father Cooper and Beanie needed a place to live, so he built a duplex there. So now they're on site. So the whole process started. Okay, how are we going to get this dream? What are we going to do with this land now that it's cleared? With the board of directors that they had formed, one of the guys was Bill Husted. The Husted family owned Waldrug. They had sent Bill here to Sioux City to go to high school, because back in those days it was an all-boys school, and there were some of those young men that needed a little direction, and they needed to get away and actually focus on their studies and their religious sides of it too. So Bill Husted said to them, if you don't have a guy, you need to come to Rapid City. Sturgis, South Dakota has this little cowboy buddy of mine, and he's doing some amazing work. So what do? They get in the car and they drive out and knock on the door of Dale Lamphier's studio and say, can we talk to you? Sure. What do you want? Well, we've got an idea. We would like to know if you would make this statue of the Blessed Mother. And Dale, I've had a lot of great conversations with Dale. And he said, that's one of the times in my life where I looked at him and I scratched my head and I said, either you guys are crazy or you've got an awful lot of faith. Because first of all, I'm not Catholic. I don't have that devotion to the Blessed Mother you guys have. Second, I've never done anything of that size or out of that material you're asking me to do. Will you make us a model? You really want me? Yeah, we really want you. So he made a clay model, and he sent it to him, and they said, you're the guy. Do it. So that's how it all began, Father Cooper's love of the Blessed Mother and his devotion, and he wanted to have that statue here and spread that devotion, get that message out to pray the rosary. It started on prayer. It continues today on prayer. And Dale Lampier was a wonderful addition, and his rendition of that statue, you know, when it went up, it just went viral. And it wasn't any viral back then. It was all printed media. But it did. Viral. It did. It just literally exploded. And Dale will tell you to this day, he said it was one of the defining moments in my life. I'm a little guy out here in the middle of nowhere. That goes up and it goes out in these publications. I get a phone call from Dolores Hope, Bob Hope's wife, saying, would you consider, I saw it, she was on the board of Mutual in Omaha, and said, I saw this beautiful statue. Would you consider coming to Washington and doing a statue in the Basilica?
Oh.
Yes. And he said, that's my career just exploded. Mm-hmm. It just literally took off thanks to that statue. He said, you folks are always so gracious when I do something and I bring it and you love it and all that. And he said, and I appreciate all that, but you really don't know what you did for me.
Open the door.
And my career. I said, it all started with that, truthfully.
That is just incredible to think about. I've heard bits and pieces of the history, but you laid that out so beautifully, and there's a lot to think about there and all those connections. And is that written down anywhere? How are you guys going to preserve all of this history?
We do have some history, and Beanie did write a book, and it's
Yes,
called The
that's
Miracle
right.
of Trinity Heights,
Mhm.
and he goes through some of those steps in depth in there. One of the things in his book, he'll say fate. I don't think so. It's divine intervention. There's no other way to describe it. The location of the statue. They have the grounds and they're all cleared. And these guys are a faithful little group of volunteers up there, and they're cutting wood and they're grading with an old Ford tractor that's still up there. It still runs. And they're out there with coffee cans full of grass seed like Johnny Appleseed, trying to spread grass seed to get this to grow. Well, where are we going to put the statue? So they got a stake with a red bandana on it, and they come out and they stick it here and say, how about here? Oh, I don't know. So they pull the stake out and they go, how about here? Let's think about it a few days. Well, Dale calls them and says, is the platform ready that the statue's going to go on? They go, no, we're still trying to decide where we want it. And he said, you better decide because the statue's coming. So they go
Time
out
to get
and
going.
and they put it here and go, it goes right here. And they started the process and build it. Now, when you overlay the picture of the old property, guess where it sits?
Where the chapel was?
Where the chapel was.
Oh, wow.
That's total guess on my part.
In the old buildings, that's in the building where the chapel
Wow.
was. That's where that statue sat.
Can I note that Terry is not using any notes?
Yes.
This is all audio for y'all, but Terry has no notes. when
Yes,
when
very
we ask for
impressive.
dates, he has them. So I just wanted to interrupt you and point that out.
I think what a beautiful witness of just the faith. We think a lot about Mary's fiat, her yes to the Lord, and how she has become such a witness that she invites us to that same moment in our lives, to say yes to not knowing the end of what this is going to look like, but just yes to a statue, yes. And even in your life, that yes to accepting your role. She is just such a loving mother to us, and to invite us and to be able to say yes like she did is just so profound, and such a beautiful witness for those in our community and in the diocese.
If you don't know the Blessed Mother right now, I implore you, pick up a rosary, pick up a prayer card, come up and walk the grounds and sit in front of that statue or any of the many statues there and open up your heart, because she'll come to you. She is that way. She will never turn anybody away. So I truly can't express that enough to people. If you don't know the Blessed Mother, get to know her.
Now's the time.
It is.
Well, and
Yeah.
looking at the grounds, you've referenced the statue, and around on the side where the Mary statue is, if I remember correctly, the mysteries of the rosaries on the pillars in that section that you
They do.
can walk.
Yep.
And then on the other side, which is my favorite area, are the little I don't know what they're called, the little grottos, the little shrines to the different Marian apparitions. So what are some of the other things that people can see when they visit?
Well, if we go back and follow that timeline that we started with, the plan was, okay, you got the statue of the Blessed Mother, now let's put the statue of Jesus at the other end. Well, again, here's something that you go, it's a head scratcher. At that time, we have this local wood carver in Lamars, Iowa, who spends 7 years of his life hand carving the Last Supper. And he takes it to the Iowa State Fair, and they're lined up for a mile waiting to get in and see this thing. He takes it back home. Of course, Father Cooper and Beanie get word of this. They're back knocking on his door saying, hey,
Hello.
what are you going to do with that? And Jerry says, I don't know. Now, here's a gentleman and his wife who've lived all their life in their same little house. He works for the post office. And he's been offered a large sum of money to take it and put it in a museum in Florida. And he said, I don't really want to do that. It's too far. I'd just as soon it was closer so I could keep an eye on it, Would you put it here? Well, I love the Blessed Mother as much as you. I like what you have going there, but you don't have a building. If we build a building, would you put it there? He said, yes. I love the Blessed Mother. I like what you got started. You build a building and I'll put it there. At that time, in any of these endeavors, there's no guaranteed income. It's all on a donation, a bench plaque, a name plaque, whatever that people wanted to do to make this evolve. they had a very likable banker who was friends with Beanie, and he was generous with them as far as, I will give you at that time, a $270,000 loan to build this building on no guaranteed income. So that's a pretty big step from a banker. They built the building. They put the Last Supper there. So at that time, here's Father Cooper and Beanie Cooper, and they're walking across the parking lot. Father Cooper hands Beanie a letter, and he says, "You need to read this." And Beanie goes, "The bank calling our note due?" He said, "Read it." There was a priest who started in Sioux City, Father Cavan, who became Monsignor Cavan, who went on to help found the Catholic University. He authored about 20 books on Catholicism. If you ever want to get into a very deep Catholicism book, pick up one of his books, and you better be ready because it's difficult. Anyway, he had retired. He was here at Holy Spirit, living out the remainder of his time, and he had came up and saw what was going on there. He was friends with Father Cooper. In the letter, he opened it up and it said, "Father Harry, I really like what you've got going on there. Keep up the good work. I hope this helps." And it was a check for $268,000.
Wow.
Now, they didn't go knock on his door. They didn't go ask him for a donation. It was what it cost to build the building. So that was the next thing that evolved. Jerry Troffler donates this thing, a 7-figure work of amazing art. We have a Monsignor who donates the funds to make this building happen. So you can't make that stuff up. That's got to be the Blessed Mother and divine intervention saying you're on the right track, keep it up. So that's when they went west and they started in towards the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the apparitions, the 6 approved apparitions of the Blessed Mother. That was the next proper step. If you look at the statue of Mary, she's reaching out with her left hand and she's pointing with her right hand. And she's pointing to her son. Now again, that wasn't planned up there. That, we wanted that general direction, but if you go look at that, it's a direct line with her left hand, with her right hand pointing to the Sacred Heart. So they went back to Dale and said, "Dale, we've got another job." So he took that on. That was placed in '97, and they had the whole idea. Jim Duffy was an architect here in Sioux City, and Jim again was friends with Beanie and became was friends with Father Cooper and became part of the early goings. And he was it's an outstanding architecture. He's the one that did St. Mike's Church as well. But one of his most cherished things was he laid out the grounds for the Queen of Peace. The statue, the base for it, that area south of it, which is called the Trinity Gardens, and then the outdoor cathedral, which you walk up with the Stations of the Cross on both sides, leading up to the Sacred Heart, and then the apparitions of Mary on the outside. So that's all laid out. Now we just got to get it done. So they went back to Dale, and he did the statue. They put it in. They put some Stations of the Cross that came from, I believe, it was either St. Joseph or Cathedral. Somebody had renovated back there, and then they were the big old plaster ones. And they encased them in some plexiglass and put them out there. And it was a good thought to begin with, but over the years, as the moisture, the freezing and thawing the moisture just started peeling and fell apart. That was one of my first endeavors when I came. I went to the board and said, "Look, I don't know what your thoughts are, but we have to get new stations." They did some horrible things to Jesus in the Passion, but they didn't behead him. And literally one of the statues had gotten that bad.
Wasn't meant for the elements of Iowa.
It wasn't. So that was one of the first things that we did when I came in. But that's one of the most cherished, visited areas up there are the 6 apparitions. Our Lady of Guadalupe, of course, is a tremendous shrine here. We have a wonderful following here in Sioux City that are very, very devoted to her, and flowers, candles, nonstop, and it's wonderful to see that they come up and they continue that devotion there too. No admission, so that's a wonderful thing for the people will come up and they'll bring their families and they can go up and they can spend 10 minutes. They can spend a day and a half. So that was the next step going forward. So the last step before myself was the Way of the Saints. After they had the apparitions in, and then they went to the Way of the Saints to put these wonderful pieces of our Catholicism that through our history really, really made things happen and made your belief even grow even stronger. The martyrs, the doctors of our faith, those early saints, and they're all depicted with a little history of their life in a picture in different areas up there to follow through. And then there's 5 statues up there as well. St. Jude, St. Peregrine, Mother Teresa, Padre Pio, Blessed Teresa Little Flower, all in that Way of the Saints area. They went back to Dale and asked him to do a beautiful statue of Moses coming down the mount with the 10 Commandments, and the setting they did that in is simply gorgeous. Again, Jim Duffy and his magic, he has that coming right down the side hill with rocks in there. It's almost as if you were standing right there, 3,000 years ago or whatever the date would be, and it's gorgeous too. The other artist and sculptor that has blessed us up there is Sandra Johnson. And Sandra Johnson has done a number of pieces for us as well. Her first up there was Rachel Weeping. It's in the Circle of Life. And then she did Peter and Paul, basically just to the left of the statue of Jesus, and Peter with the key to the kingdom and Paul with his written word, and discussing how they're going to carry on now that Jesus is no longer with them in body. So I reached out to her when we were going to do the new Stations of the Cross, and she did those. We mounted those onto some stainless steel, kind of tying the 2 statues together as a backdrop. They're wonderful. And then one thing Beanie said to me when he left, when I came in, he said, I didn't get John the Baptist done. I really wanted to get him a statue of him here. So we reached back out to Sandra Johnson and kind of explained what we wanted to do. And for those that haven't seen that yet, it is one of the most beautiful statues we have up there, and that's saying a lot. But it's set in a wonderful place. It's right next to a little pond and stream that we have up there, and it's a 2-sided statue. We have a big wall concrete wall that's poured, and it's mounted right to there. And it's John the Baptist in the baptism of Christ, and it is simply gorgeous. People will come and they'll sit by that and just take that in for hours. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful addition.
Yeah, it's just so amazing. However, it seems like there's always a lot of growth happening up there. We always don't see the behind the scenes of how that's made possible. But, I know this year we have Trinity Heights Queen of Peace is one of the pilgrimage sites for the year of Jubilee. Also, you have a chapel that's, in those stages of being created and being built. And then also you have been filmed for the Hidden Gem series on EWTN. So it's a very exciting time.
Pinch me. I gotta be dreaming. It's beyond our comprehension that all these things are coming together like they are. The chapel was a dream. We have a very small chapel, the Divine Mercy Chapel, and it's beautiful in its own little way. It is a beautiful little place. Well, when we have a lot of tour groups that come, and they want to bring their priest, or they want to just come and join us in Mass, and we simply can't do that there. So we would set up in the Marian Center a temporary little chapel, and it worked, but it's still a meeting room. It's still not a chapel. What really got to me was one day we were having Mass, and it was a Friday. I believe it was the first Friday in the little chapel, and the vestibule was full and the chapel was full. And here come a couple, and they came to the door to open up the door, but it was like, no. I mean, there was a couple in their 30s, and I think they had 6 young children with them. So at the time, you didn't think about it, but after Mass, and I walked out, and ran into them on the grounds. They were from North Dakota. They made a special pilgrimage to come to Trinity Heights. They wanted to go to Mass. And at that point, I was like, it broke my heart. They'd come that far, and that was really one of the things that they wanted to include in their visit. So that's when we went to the board and said, look, we've got statues, we've got all of these things, we've got a nice little chapel. But when we have school kids come and they want to go to Mass, and we have these tour buses come and they want to go to Mass, isn't that the next step? The Blessed Mother didn't come out and ask Father Cooper to build the chapel here on the grounds, but I think it was the right thing to do.
It's going to be beautiful.
It's taken some time. We went through a couple different processes to begin, and then started to put a budget together. And of course, those things just continue. That's a moving target. A lot of times, all the prices after COVID escalated, and so that drove all that up. But when we started, and we thought, do we put a little white clad building up here, or do we do something? This is a beautiful, beautiful place. They didn't do that when they started all this. Why, if we're going to do this, why don't we do something that is truly going to be spectacular? So that's what we set out to do. We had local architect, Doug Rose, helped us tremendously, and we've got a concept that we think is going to be magnificent. It's going to be here for decades. That thing is built like a fortress. It has solid concrete walls. It has stone on the inside and on the outside, with the exception of the east end, which looks at the Blessed Mother. It is all glass. Everybody that's in there, it'll seat about 150. Everybody that's in there is going to have a direct line of sight to the Blessed Mother, where it all started. Outside, if you haven't been up there, it's really, really neat. The glass is reflective. So when you go out there and you start walking around and the Blessed Mother's behind you, she's still right there in front of you. So it's really a nice little tidbit that happened.
Are you still thinking early summer maybe that would be done?
We're hoping, we had some delays last year. There's been some, we made a couple changes with product and stuff that we ordered, and that slowed the progress. We're thinking probably midsummer. When we get the chapel to a point of where all of the big equipment is done, then the entire area in front, from the parking lot, from all over to the side of the sidewalk that's there now, all the way to the St. Joseph Center, is all going to be taken out, and that's all going to be in granite, pavers, and cobblestone.
Wow.
It is going to be it's going to be a setting in front of the chapel, and it's really going to give it an awesome look. So we have to get the heavy equipment out of there so they can prepare all that base. Over by the St. Joseph Center, there is going to be a Holy Trinity fountain, and it'll be in the shape of a triangle, 30 by 30 by 30, with one spray coming from each point into the middle, with one spray in the middle coming up, the 3 into 1. So the fountains should get poured here in the next 6 weeks. And then it's just going to be how soon can the masons get back in and complete their work, finishing the exterior of the chapel, so we can get started on that. They're inside now. The floor is poured. They're starting to finish the framing and starting working on the walls. The heating system is in. So we're getting there inside.
So we need to come down there and take some progress pictures and put them out on our social media.
It'd be a good time where you can get inside now and take a look and kind of get a feel for what's going to it's going to evolve, with the pews. So.
I think we'll just invite ourselves over and do that.
Anytime you want to come.
I want to come along.
Yeah, and Carmen is going to come along.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that opening, and like I said, we'll get some visuals out for people to see and get excited about it. And also, as soon as you hear from EWTN when Hidden Gems is going to be out, we actually talked before recording that, not sure yet, but maybe in the spring. So we'll. Yeah. Between your PR and our PR, we'll let people know when.
That was really it's going to be wonderful, I think, for the grotto and the Queen of Peace Shrine to get that exposure. Mm-hmm. And I'll go another step. I can ramble for days, but one of the commentator that did the Hidden Gems, Nell was her name. she emailed me last week, and she asked me, we have some small prayer cards about the size of a business card, and has the Blessed Mother in a black backdrop with a rosary over her hands, and she asked me if I could send her some of those. She said, I can't get it out of my mind. So when I go, she has a Catholic church tours group thing that she actually runs, a nonprofit, and she goes around and she helps people, cities, set up these so they can go, like kind of what we're doing, what they did 2 weeks ago, where they went to the different churches and such, and had people come in, and you have that person explain everything that's in there.
Yep.
Yeah, she has that. That's what she does. And she said, I keep going back to Trinity Heights. I was so taken aback by what we found there. And I'm going to Kentucky, and I'm going to do a couple presentations. So that's the things that we're excited about. The Hidden Gems is great. Again, we can talk for days. If you know somebody that hasn't been there, just tell them, hey, drive up and take a look. I think you will be pleasantly surprised.
Well, Bishop Nicholas has, as we mentioned, declared Shrine of Trinity Heights Queen of Peace and the Shrine of the Grotto of the Redemption as pilgrimage sites, and we've got a lot of content out about that, so it'd be a perfect excuse to come either to Sioux City or go to West Bend or both. That would be great. So thank you, Terry, for coming and sharing. I just love all the facts and the history. I think even if people know the history, they'll be fun for them to listen to it again and your take on it. So really appreciate you coming down here.
Oh, I appreciate asking.
Sitting
so
right
much
in the studio with us, which is pretty fun. So be watching for that chapel dedication and the progress pictures that we've just decided today we're going to do. And the Hidden Gems. So thank you all for following Illuminating Catholics. We hope you enjoyed this episode and the ones we've already done. And don't miss any. We've got so many great ones already on the schedule. We've been very blessed with that. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Illuminating Catholics, shedding light to understand the modern church. Follow us for more episodes on topics of the Catholic faith. For more diocesan news, visit lumenmedia.org.